In this video, I'm going to be talking about what is a RMLO in real estate and why it's important for you to use one if you're doing seller financing. When I first got started, I had no clue what it was, but what RMLO actually stands for is Residential Mortgage Loan Originator. And if you're doing seller financing, there is a lot of guidelines, there is a lot of consumer protection. After 2008, there was a lot of regulations. There was Dodd-Frank that passed and the SAFE Act that basically protects the consumer to making sure that nobody's getting taken advantage of. And there's proper steps that you need to be taking, especially if you're going to be really doing this as a business and you're going to be doing this as a career, is you want to make sure that you do things properly. So what exactly does a residential mortgage loan originator do? What they do is really the most important things to find out if that borrower has the ability to repay, right? Because at the end of the day, one of the most important things when you are doing seller financing is making sure that the borrower is able to pay, right? And how are you going to do that, and how are you going to know that, right? Well, they're going to provide all of the copy of their credit report, right? So once you go under contract and you sign the agreement, right, we always make sure that when we're seller financing, that the borrower always pays for the residential mortgage loan originator, the RMLO. We always have them pay, and typically that's going to be somewhere around $1,200 here in Texas. In my current market, that's what we pay for RMLO, right? The borrower does. So when they send the contract to them, they start gathering all the documents, so you don't have to make all those phone calls, so you don't have to chase all those papers, right? What they do is they provide a credit report, right? And depending on how they're, have their proof of income, they're either going to provide, 12 months of bank statements, or they're going to provide their tax returns, whatever the case may be. And they also know all the laws when it comes to the proper disclosures, right? Because there's a certain timeline that you have to provide the borrower to make sure that if they feel uncomfortable or if they feel like those numbers are not what they're willing to do, they can go ahead and walk away without a problem. But you need to follow all those guidelines, and instead of you trying to find out what all those laws and guidelines are, the RMLO is going to do that for you. That's why it's well worth the money. There's a lot of laws passed that if you're doing more than 3, here in Texas 5 a year, you must use an RMLO. They're going to be gathering all that important documentation to say, okay, based on the person saying, hey, I make $10,000 a month, but based on the bank statements, they make $8,500 a month. Here's the proof. This is what we came up with. So whenever you're doing your underwriting, $8,500 may still be fine, and they still may be in that threshold where they're able to comfortably make that payment. The main thing that you're trying to do is obviously you're trying to protect the consumer, but most importantly, as investors, you're also trying to protect yourselves, right? Because we never know what may happen. So 4 or 5 years down the road, if that person gets into a bind or gets into a certain situation where they want to go into foreclosure, or they can't afford that payment, they can take you to court. And if you don't do the proper documentation and you don't follow certain procedures, they can say, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Investor never did their due diligence. I wasn't able to make that payment. I didn't provide any documentation on my income. I didn't provide their bank statement. So that's why it's very, very important using an RMLO from here on out. So if you're seller financing, I hope that you are using RMLO. I'd like to hear from you, right? Have you used an RMLO, or are you looking for an RMLO? If you're in Texas and you need a couple of good resources, post a comment, send me a message. I'll be more than happy to connect you with some of the ones that we utilize here in Texas. For those of you guys that are tuning in for the very first time, I provide a lot of value when it comes to real estate investing, and especially note investing. So if you want a free resource, a free class that I did a few weeks back that helps you understand the basics of note investing, make sure you click one of the very first links. It's in the description on how you can get your free training. All you got to do is put in your email. So I hope that has helped, and until then, I'll see you guys on the next video.